Good evening, everybody. It's really great to meet all of you. So last night, I had the pleasure of meeting quite a few of the speakers that are in front of you here today. And the conversation went something like this. Hi, my name is Lila. I run Wikimedia Foundation. And then they would inevitably ask me what my talk is about, and I want to hear about it in like 2 words, and of course I can't summarize it that quickly. So I say, well, my talk is about cats, and then sheep, and also some wolves. So I'm a non-native English speaker. I moved to the city when I was 15 with a backpack and $25, and every time people ask me what motivated me to come to New York from Moscow all the way on the other side of the globe, I say curiosity. And when I started speaking English, learning it, I heard this strange saying: curiosity killed the cat. Like, what? If the cat is not even curious, wouldn't it look like this? Wouldn't it be a sheep? Well, I think it would. So what did kill the cat? Fear. Fear is what killed the cat. Fear. Fear. And being a scientist, I want to prove to you that that's the case. So, after a little while, I kind of got what people were saying. I understood that, curiosity, it could be really dangerous. And from my personal history, my great-grandfather ended up in hiding for 15 years. He couldn't see his family, or he saw them at very, very small intervals because he was too curious about the government. He was trying to figure out what the government was doing and why. So he ended up hiding in a kind of case like this every time somebody knocked on the door in little bits of time, and he got to see my grandmother, and she used to tell those stories. So yeah, curiosity. Curious people can be dangerous. They ask questions. What's up with that? They have this ability to think critically. In fact, there are about 500 million of them learning and thinking critically on Wikipedia every month. I'm sure there's some around here, maybe? Yes? Yeah? Okay, excellent. What's really amazing about curiosity, I'm sure you personally have probably lost yourself in the pathway through the amazing little things that are connected on Wikipedia. You may have started in one place and ended up in a completely different one. You may have started with somebody like Muhammad Ali, and you wanted to learn about his history. The next thing you know, you're reading about Madagascar. The way they're linked, by the way, is because his grandmother was born there. And then you may be learning about biodiversity. Of course, Madagascar, right? That's amazing. It's amazing that you went down this amazing rabbit hole from Muhammad Ali to biodiversity with because of the same thing, curiosity, the thing that brought me from Moscow to New York. Years ago, back in college, I worked on a genomics project on the human genome when we were originally starting to map it. And from there, I realized that this is something that's innate. It's something that's actually encoded in our DNA. So I was part of the project that built visualization tools so that scientists could compare 2 different genomes. So for example, like these 2 guys over here, you could compare their genomes visually, and you can see the difference. And the difference is remarkable. It's only 8%. These 2 guys, they're 92% the same, and only about 10 genes, we believe now, are accountable for the difference between them. It's remarkable. How does that happen? How does it happen that evolutionary, such small percentage of difference accounts for so much? Evolution takes curious ways to explore. And not only that, our particular evolutionary leap we caused something called neoteny. Anybody familiar with that word? Anybody knows what that means? Awesome. What does it mean?
It's like not maturing into like an adult.
You're right. So it means retaining your childhood characteristics for your entire, no, you're right, for almost your entire life. And that's really important because besides the fact that we kind of look like babies, right? We have no skin, we only have skin and we don't have hair all over us. We're kind of weaker, have this enormous head that causes all kinds of problems. But we also, stay curious. We stay curious throughout our lives, and actually our brain matures much slower. It retains its plasticity. It is indeed what big part of what makes us human. Curiosity is defined as the need, the desire to learn. So we're learners by our architecture, by our design. And learning is a pattern. For those of you familiar with physiology, we emerge, our brain emerges initially as kind of like this dance tree. And then as we learn, some of the branches become thicker and longer, and they get reinforced. Artificial intelligence surprisingly works very, very similar in that respect. The learning algorithms are modeled on this idea. But for an artificial intelligence algorithm that has to use all this big data that you guys just heard about, to be actually effective, it needs to diverge, just like evolution. It needs to diverge from the beaten path. It can't, if it repeats itself, it's ineffective. So it has these incentives to learn. This algorithm for humans is curiosity, and it forces divergence. So in this particular case, and we're rewarded by that. Dopamine is released in our brains, and you get the learner's high. So you end up with people like Ben Franklin flying a kite in the middle of the night, in a storm, and discovering electricity. But it's also dangerous. He could have gotten killed. So this divergence, this curiosity, is definitely a dangerous proposition. So let's talk about that dead cat and what happened there. So yes, it's a dangerous thing. Curiosity can lead us climb up a tree, big cliff, dark cave, all kinds of crazy things can happen. We can get in trouble. And in fact, more importantly, the systems that we build for ourselves, our own governments, our own power structures, really do not like divergence. Yeah, this is our good friend Galileo Galilei, and as many of you know what happened to him for diverging. And in fact, it's Saint Augustine called this exploration a disease, which launched Europe into the Dark Ages. And in fact, the rest of the world ended up moving faster and leaving Europe behind for centuries because of this. Curiosity is important. But what stops curiosity is fear. Fear is one of the fundamental things that can undermine our ability to self-actualize. And of course, I'm sure you're familiar with the Maslow structure pyramid, and you can argue with that. But the reality is, if we do not feel safe, we're not going to be able to explore and understand ourselves and to learn and to do a lot of other higher order functions. The fear is paralyzing. The poster here actually says, "Don't blob," and it's basically a warning in the Soviet time about this foreigners that can come in and hurt us if you're talking and discussing too many things. In fact, in Romania, They were worried about it so much that they built buildings with microphones directly embedded into the walls. And the microphones were connected to the grid directly so that they would almost never fail. And at any given time during the 80s, about 50,000 conversations were listened to concurrently and even more recorded. It's amazing. It's all in the name of being safe. And today we have an interesting system, bugs system of our own, of course. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. But how do we know? How do we know this is happening? Well, we know because Snowden released information on upstream surveillance back in 2013, and Wikipedia, and more importantly, people who go to Wikipedia, because at the end of the day, the site is a site. What's really interesting are the conversations that are happening on it, or the inquiries that are happening on it, was explicitly called out as being targeted. So that is why we sued the NSA earlier this year. But this is, let's go back to science. Let's assume the opposite. Let's assume that I'm wrong, that we are all wrong, and the reality is we are being protected here. That all of this is for our own good. Let's assume for just a second that thousands of terabytes of data that are passing through North American backbone every month and being filtered effectively, all of this information being filtered, does actually make us safer. Let's just put aside the First and the Fourth Amendment for a second. You can see actually on the slide, you can see how many links. This is fiber under the ocean. You can see that the majority of the fiber is going between the United States. Actually, a lot of it going right here in New York, in the harbor in New York, and the rest of the world. So it's not just that the North American traffic is passing through our borders, right, through our backbone. It's a lot of the world's traffic. So let's say it's for our own good, for our own safety. But what happens when you know you're watched? An entirely different thing happens. You start to restrain yourself. In fact, studies show that when people know their conversations are exposed, they're half as likely to disclose information or to share information. And that is critical. Because if people are afraid, they're not going to be speaking, they're not going to speak up. But the wolves, the bad guys that we are trying to protect ourselves against, they already know they're being watched. So they use all kinds of techniques which are possible to hide their information already. It's not a big deal. At the same time, the citizens, the normal people, just stop having conversations. So as a result, the citizens lose the ability to defend themselves, lose the ability to protect themselves, and they become the sheep. And what kills curiosity, in fact, kills the cat. And this is why on March 10th, we filed the lawsuit. But I want to pause here, and I want to thank all of you for those of you who have worked on the USA Freedom Act, for helping drive this point forward, for helping us defend ourselves and defend our knowledge. Thank you.